When I was young, one of my favorite desserts was my mother's sweet potato pie. It always tasted the same. To me, it was perfect every time. I'd often ask her, "Mom, what do you put in here to make it taste so good?" She'd always respond, "I just use the same stuff every time." In other words, number one, she wasn't going to tell me. And two, she had a recipe that worked, so she never changed it. Well, the Bible is like a cookbook, full of recipes that work, that can make our life spiritually successful. Please note how Paul explains the benefits of these recipes at 2 Timothy chapter 3, verses 16 and 17. All Scripture is inspired of God and beneficial for teaching, for reproving, for setting things straight, for disciplining in righteousness, so that the man of God may be fully competent, completely equipped for every good work. Sometimes the recipe from God's inspired word comes in the form of a Bible example. As we study that example, we extract qualities and attitudes that we can imitate. Other times, there's a list of qualities, such as the various aspects of the fruitage of God's Spirit mentioned in Galatians chapter 5, or the list of positive things to consider at Philippians 4.
Religion is like a vehicle. You remember when you were first choosing your car, your first car perhaps, or maybe your second or third, whatever. But maybe you're a Ford guy. My dad was more of a Chev guy. So it depends. What vehicle have you grew up with? A lot of people grow up, my dad drove a Ford and his dad drove a Ford or a Dodge. Maybe you're a Dodge man. But my dad was a Chev guy, and guess what? I drive a Chev. I drive a GMC, same thing, General Motors. And I know guys that drive Fords. They love Fords. They wouldn't drive a Chev. Maybe you're a Volkswagen guy. Volkswagen. Maybe you like the Volkswagen. I always thought those Volkswagens, they're good on gas, cheap to run, cheapest thing on the road, and you can get those ones you can live in them. That'd be cool, eh? But maybe you went out and said, you know what? We have the cleanest engine on the market. Our engine meets all the emissions and all of this stuff, and maybe it doesn't. Maybe you lied to all the people out there and told them all these things just to make them buy your car. Hop into your religion. And maybe someone within the vehicle manufacturer, the motor manufacturer, an engineer knew that there was some problems with the vehicle. Maybe the vehicle had a seatbelt issue and people were dying. And so the engineer leaves, and then he's threatened. He's disfellowshipped from everyone. People in the company are told not to associate with him. Maybe the company sues him or something even. And all the guy was doing is leaving because he cared about people. So he left the religion, left the vehicle company, the motor company, and to try to help people. And so that happens. That's kind of like being an apostate. These guys leave and then they blow the whistle. They're whistleblowers, really. Why? Well, because they've seen what they've engineered to kill people. It's not helping people. Or maybe it's not efficient. It's not, they lied through their teeth on the emissions and it's not what they say it is. That sounds to me like religion. Each religion, they have their vehicle. And if you grew up in that vehicle, you're familiar with it, right? You grew up in that vehicle. You spent all those years going to town with your mom and dad in that vehicle. You're going to get the same thing. I'm going to get a Chev. I'm a Chev guy. You know, oh, this is who we are as people. We like to travel in vehicles, but maybe you don't want to use a vehicle and you want to do something different. Well, you could ride a bike, I guess. You could walk. Those are always good things. Now, when we think of religion, a lot of people think of spirituality, but spirituality has nothing to do with religion. Nothing to do with it at all, spirituality. When you think of spirituality, I think of harmony with nature, harmony with ourselves. That's spirituality. Harmony, if we have a belief in God. You see, we can be spiritual, but maybe we don't believe in a higher power. Maybe we're a humanist, but we're spiritual. We're in harmony. We're spiritual. We're in harmony with nature, with everything around us. That can happen. There's different ways of being spiritual, but it's not religion. Religion is just a vehicle. Now, the vehicle can take you to a place of spirituality where you want to go. Maybe you want to go to the beach and do some meditation on the beach or something. The vehicle can take you there. Well, the religion. So the religions today, they're vehicles to spirituality. So you go to the religion, you go into the church, and you get a sense of spirituality. And you should, because there's men there, men and women that are trained about God, about the book, about the Bible. There's different types of spirituality, different Bibles on earth. But people come to these places, these temples, these churches, kingdom halls. They come to them for spirituality, to learn about God, to learn about the higher power, how to have faith in God. Who is God? Or do people learn that at every church? Do they teach that? Well, not all churches. Some religions have seatbelt issues. Some religions don't meet the emissions. They don't follow the Bible. You see, the Bible, there'd be a Bible of emissions. Let's say, pretend. Follow along with my analogy. So some of the religions don't follow the Bible. They've changed it, and they've inserted, taken out, and they kind of made their own Bible. There's a lot of religions that have done that. Some religions keep making Bibles or volumes. The Watchtower does that. They have when I was in it, we had a bound volume for every year. A bound volume of Watchtowers. You see, in them days, we'd get 2 Watchtowers a month. So you'd end up with 24 of them in a bound volume. They'd bind them, and then you'd put them on a shelf, this big brown bound volume, 1981, all the Watchtowers. And then you'd have an awake one. You see, we used to get awakes too, twice a month, I believe. And they'd have a bound volume of all these awakes. So we'd have I was in it for 30 years, so you'd have 30 bound volumes of Watchtowers and 30 of these bound volumes of awakes. And anytime there was a litigation issue, because you couldn't go to courts for civil matters or other matters, you had to go to the Watchtower. And you'd go through the Watchtower. So they ended up making indexes. So you could look up certain words, and it would help you find the bound volume on the shelf. It was litigation. Now it's done by computers. So they're still doing it, but it's all done through the website. They get you in, and it's all litigation. These are businesses that run, and they might have some seatbelt issues that kill people. Watchtower does. They have some issues in there. They've strayed from the Bible. They don't meet the emissions in the religion because of the blood doctrine. Kills people. Bad decision. Apostle Paul said it's conscience. Yes, it's conscience. We've had many videos on that. The 2-witness rule, hiding pedophilia within, just so that Watchtower doesn't get a bad name. Now remember, we're going to look at their broadcast this the February one that just came out. Remember, Jehovah equals Watchtower. Jehovah equals Watchtower. If you want to know about Jehovah in this whole wide world, you plug it into your computer. Where do I learn about it? They'll send you to the Kingdom Hall, Watchtower. Google will send you there, because Jehovah is a made-up name. It's not God's name. believe it or not. Jehovah does not appear anywhere in the New Testament. Yahweh does not either. You see, Watchtower put it in. They inserted it 237 times, and they said, because we think it should be there. But yet, on the other hand, they're not inspired. So then the common person like me would ask the question, well, who gives you the authority to make that big of a change? When it says in Revelation that if anyone adds or anyone takes away, they're going to hell. They have to deal with the judgment. Jesus. It's not a nice thing if you do that. But they've done it. They've changed the book. They've changed the omissions. They have problems. It's full of problems. And when you have problems, who do you blame? Well, it's those darn engineers that quit the company and they're out there and they wrote books about us. They wrote books about our auto company, and they said that we have faulty engines and we don't meet emissions. And well, who are these guys? Well, they're engineers. Where did they? Well, they worked right with the leaders. Right in with the leaders, right in with the governing body. Ones have left. And they don't like it, so there are books written, ones. There's anointed ones. Pentant here in Alberta wrote a book. He was anointed and took the emblems every year. His son wanted to go to university. He looked in the Bible. The Bible says education is like gold. It's like silver. It's better than it. That's what the Proverbs says. And he sent his son to university, and they got rid of him. The Watchtower got rid of him. They don't like higher education. So the guy left and wrote a book. Another guy was in with them, governing body, member. He said, there's some stuff happening here that's not right, guys. Doesn't meet the Bible. They kicked him out. They disfellowshipped him. That's what happens. Anyways, we're going to take a look at their broadcast this month. We're going to see how this vehicle, it's a vehicle, folks. It's a business. It's just like any car manufacturer. And this vehicle has some issues. It's caused people to lose loss of life, this vehicle. And now this vehicle's getting sued left and right. And so it's trying to cover its tracks. It's full of holes. But what we're going to see in the broadcast today, this vehicle is blaming the engineers that left the company. This vehicle manufacturer, this religion is blaming the people that were brave enough to leave the company, leave the religion, because of humanitarian reasons, because they love people and they don't want to see any more bloodshed, any more people dying, any more families getting split up. You know, this vehicle has a tendency just to lose a tire, and the car rolls over and the whole family scatters and everyone gets broken up. You see, this vehicle, this religion is not about keeping the family tightly together. If one member of the family decides to leave and ride in another vehicle, maybe they decide to go Ford. I'm a Chev guy, they went Ford. Everyone in the Chev family has to disfellowship them, never ever talk to them again. They're Ford people. We're Chevs, right? Isn't that ridiculous? It's just utterly ridiculous, but that's the way this religion works. But anyways, folks, let's look in on this religion and let's see how it works. We're going to look at the broadcast. We crunched the broadcast down to 10 minutes from an hour and 4 minutes. So we got all the main points up. Now, what you'll notice is every time they say Jehovah, Davis is there saying Watchtower. And he's watching them. Watchtower. So remember, Jehovah equals Watchtower. Jehovah's not in the Bible. Jehovah equals Watchtower. If you want to know about Jehovah, you go to Jehovah's Witnesses. They'll tell you about Jehovah. And they actually run their religion like Jehovah. Their Bible talks about Jehovah in the Old Testament quite a bit. And they reference the Old Testament pretty well always, because that's where you find Jehovah, the real Jehovah. Anything in the New Testament was an insert. Jesus never ever once said the word Jehovah, not once. It's a good question, right? Well, we have other videos on that. We do talk about it. Today, we're going to look at the broadcast. So thanks for Thanks for listening, and let's get right into it. Bye for now.
As this system draws to a close, Satan will try to divide us from within because we need to trust. Trust in Jehovah
Watchtower.
and his organization requires humility, but humility helps us to trust that
Watchtower.
Jehovah knows precisely when and how to act in our behalf. Humility helps us to admit that
Watchtower.
Jehovah's thoughts are vastly superior to our own. We recognize our limited discernment in comparison with Jehovah's
Watchtower.
all-encompassing perception. So, as the Great Tribulation approaches, humbly trust in
Watchtower.
Jehovah and his organization. Be at unity with
Watchtower.
Jehovah's organization today by keeping calm and showing trust. Remember, we're all in this together. Humility requires trust. So trust that
Watchtower.
Jehovah's way of doing things is always best.
Jehovah's
Watchtower.
Witnesses are known for publishing in hundreds of languages, with a website recognized as the most widely translated in the world. But have you ever wondered how we're able to release our literature in print and online in so many languages at once? The answer involves a cutting-edge publishing system that our brothers developed more than 40 years ago. A breakthrough in publishing called MEPS. Revelation chapter 14, verse 6 prophesied that the good news would be preached to every nation and tribe and tongue and people.
It does not say that.
So we got to work on building MEPS. Some brothers and sisters concentrated on the hardware, the actual circuitry. Other brothers concentrated on the screen itself and building that. And then others of us concentrated on the software.
The project began. The governing body realized that if Jehovah's Witnesses worldwide could somehow study the same material each week at meetings, it would unite them as never before. The April 1st, 1984 issue of the Watchtower became the first to be published in multiple languages simultaneously. In just the next year, the number of simultaneous languages grew to, and by 2021, the study edition
Truly
of
a
the
printing
Watchtower
business.
was being published simultaneously in more than 390 languages. Almost
a printing
all
business.
of Jehovah's Witnesses are now able to study the same spiritual food at our meetings at the same time.
Truly a printing business.
Truly a modern-day miracle. MEPS programming paved the way for Watchtower Library on CD-ROM and contributed to the development of the JW Library app.
But what if we face a situation where we personally begin to wonder if Jehovah is blessing us? One sister was overly concerned about her husband finding employment, but she later realized the value of him keeping up his spiritual routine in the ministry with her. But she learned to rejoice, as did John, in seeing Jehovah use
Watchtower.
others to advance kingdom interests. Often in lands where our work is banned, lies and propaganda are spread to justify persecution. But it's not just in such lands where we face false reports, misinformation, and outright lies. In fact, even though we bear the truth, apostates and others may cast us as dishonest, as deceivers. How can we respond to that unfair treatment?
Have you ever been confronted by a bad report, false report about Jehovah's people?
Watchtower.
It may be a newspaper article or a segment on the evening news, or perhaps some subject is brought up in the ministry. It could be a broad range of subjects. Our neutral stand, our stand on blood, our adherence to Jehovah's
Watchtower.
elevated moral standard and appreciation for the sanctity of marriage, or our insistence on keeping the congregation clean by disfellowshipping unrepentant wrongdoers. But whatever the subject, there are some commonalities. Such reports are often characterized by distortions, inaccuracies, and sometimes outright falsehood. And inevitably, they're presented with certainty and surety as though they were fact. When you're confronted with such a report, how do you feel? Disheartened? Discouraged? Angry? Consider the experience of a pioneer sister who was conducting a Bible study. And in the course of conducting the study, a woman walked into the house unannounced. She didn't ring the doorbell, didn't knock. And as it turned out, an acquaintance of the student, she walked right in, interrupted the Bible study, and in her hand was a book written by a man who at one time had associated with Jehovah's people. The woman said to the student, "You need to read this book." Well, an interesting conversation ensued, and our sister found herself in the position of being cast in the role of a deceiver. How did she handle that situation? And how did the Bible student respond? Well, we worship Jehovah, the God of truth. And as our Watchtower comment makes the point, we're truthful in things big and small. We love the truth. We love telling the truth about Jehovah. He says, through glory and dishonor, through bad report and good report. And then this intriguing statement, we are regarded as deceivers, and yet we are truthful. Now that's an interesting paradox, isn't it? To be truthful and yet cast in the role of a deceiver. When we are confronted with a negative report that does that to Jehovah's people, it's good to remember that Jehovah was the first target of such an attack. Now we learned something about Satan's method. He didn't begin with a statement, he began with a question, and not just a question that was designed to sow seeds of doubt. Have you ever considered some questions that Eve could have asked herself that would have helped her to make a good decision? Here's one. What do I know about the person who is the source of this negative report? What is his motive? Does he have my best interests at heart? Or does he have an agenda? And another question. Before I accept as truth a negative report from someone I don't know, is there someone I do know? Someone I trust, who I can talk with and get some good advice? Well, Eve certainly could have talked with her husband, and together they could have talked with Jehovah. And if Eve had asked herself those questions, the world would likely be a much different place today. But Eve chose to believe a lie. How about the pioneer sister and the Bible student that I mentioned earlier? How did they handle the situation? Well, the pioneer sister told us that she reflected on the fact that she was a guest in the Bible student's house, and so she felt it would be rude for her to interrupt the conversation, so she chose to say no. What did the Bible student do? Interestingly, she asked the woman, "Do you know the man who wrote that book?" No. "Do you know his motive for writing? Why would he write such a book?" "Well, I know this lady who comes and studies the Bible with me, and I know her motive is good, so I don't think I need to read your book." What a beautiful response. The Bible student got it. And we get it too. We know, and we're not surprised, that we will be the target of negative reports. At times, we may even be cast in the role of deceivers. And Jehovah has frankly told us that there are some who are willing to exchange the truth of God for the lie. but that will never be true of you or me. Instead, we hold to Jehovah, the God of truth. We continue to recommend ourselves as God's ministers by truthful speech.
When I was young, one of my favorite desserts was my mother's sweet potato pie. It always tasted the same. To me, it was perfect every time. I'd often ask her, "Mom, what do you put in here to make it taste so good?" She'd always respond, "I just use the same stuff every time."